This is NewsConference Extra with Conan Nolan.
Good morning and welcome to NewsConference Extra, a special segment of Today in LA Weekend. Joining us from Washington is Kristen Welker, host of Meet the Press, which airs every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. So, Kristen, topic one out of Washington, obviously, is the president's decision to withhold that military aid for Israel because he's upset with how the war is being prosecuted by the Netanyahu government in Gaza. The critics, and there are plenty of Republican senators who've made this argument that he has caved to the protesters on college campuses around the country. Politically speaking, what do you believe the White House is trying to gain from this?
Well, I think that there were some sharp divisions within the Democratic Party. There's no doubt about that, Conan. We saw that with younger voters. There were protest votes in primaries all across the country because of the war in the Middle East. So there's no doubt that this was an attempt to address those rifts within his own party. In fact, I'll be talking to Progressive Senator Bernie Sanders, get his reaction. So far, he says, look, this is a step in the right direction. He wants to see the president go even further. Will this quiet the critics in his own party, though? This is going to be a very close election. And of course, the anticipation is that any erosion of support around the edges could make all the difference in November. So they did want to pay attention to those voices within their own party, in addition to the fact that more than 35,000 people have died inside Gaza. And so President Biden has pointed to that, has accused Prime Minister Netanyahu of making some mistakes as he has carried out this war. But look, to your point, Conan, this is a politically fraught issue. How will this play with moderates? How will it play with independents? We know a lot of Republicans have been incredibly critical of this warning by President Biden, including Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who's accused him of basically abandoning a key ally. I will be talking to Graham on Sunday, get his reaction to all of this, as well as the Secretary of State. Where is the red line? There was a lot that was left unsaid in that interview, so we'll try to drill down on some of the details there.
Well, I can guarantee you, based on everything that I know about the protests out here, USC, UCLA, UC Irvine, all these schools, is this isn't going to mollify the demonstrators on these campuses, and it's not going to stop the efforts to to shout them down at events. I mean, we've seen that, for example. And then there's the concern, not just about, obviously about states like Michigan, for example, which is a battleground state, which has a large Arab population, but also the convention. The Democrats are looking at a real fraught national convention if something isn't done in Israel and a ceasefire isn't reached.
You're absolutely right about that, and I'll make a couple of points. One, we know that the Secretary of State, CIA director, had been in the region working furiously to try to broker a ceasefire deal. The CIA director is now back in Washington. Officials caution, look, that doesn't mean the talks have broken down, but there has not been an agreement yet. So that is a setback in terms of the broader goal of trying to get a ceasefire. You're absolutely right. That is the top goal here. In terms of the convention, we have reporting that shows that Democrats are trying vigorously to determine ways to work around the protests, to make sure that they are protesting outside of the perimeter, to make sure that the message of the president is heard, as Democratic officials have said to me, and to make sure that any interruptions, particularly on the night of his big speech, are limited and that there is robust security in place. So, look, this is a challenge for the folks who are working on the convention, who are planning the convention. But one Democrat said the concerns are a little bit overblown. They know, they are bracing for the fact that there will undoubtedly be protesters, but they believe that this will move forward because there has been so much planning in place.
And finally, last question. So the Speaker of the House is able to keep his job, Mike Johnson, in large measure because Democrats voted to help table the resolution, the motion by Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. I should point out there are plenty of California Democrats who did not vote to table that motion. That's a different story. But the Congresswoman from Georgia is saying Democrats are now running the House, which I think is a bit of hyperbole. But this is some bipartisanship we haven't seen before.
It is. And look, there are plenty of Republicans who are criticizing Speaker Johnson because you're right, he did have the support of Democrats to hold on to his seat. But guess whose support he also had? Former President Trump, who basically sent the message publicly to Marjorie Taylor Greene to back off. So I think she emerges from this politically wounded. We will have to see how this impacts Speaker Johnson overall. The bottom line is he's been able to get legislation passed. He's been able to keep the government open. He's been able to get aid packages passed for Ukraine, for Israel, for Taiwan. So he is getting stuff done. Does he hold on to his speakership once there is a new Congress? I think that's a bigger question. But for right now, the fact that he survived this threat to his speakership is significant, and I think ultimately shows that he is able to govern in a bipartisan way. Now, whether folks look at that as a good thing or bad thing, that depends on where you are sitting. But the bottom line is he was able to beat back this real threat to his speakership, something that former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy was not able to do, Conan.
Yeah, it reminds me of the headline in one of the Atlantic pieces. Maybe Mike Johnson is good at this. Kristen Welker, host of Meet the Press. You've got an action-packed show. We're looking forward to it. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Conan.
Following Meet the Press, NBC4's news conference program will be taking a look at Governor Gavin Newsom's budget. The fact is the state of California is seeing a shortfall, so programs are going to be cut. We hear from all sides on that. The summer of discontent, or I should say the semester of discontent on college campuses continues. We talked to a member of the UCLA faculty who's demanding Gene Block, the chancellor's resignation. We also hear from the University of California Police. Plus, there's a new poll out indicating a remarkable number of people living in Los Angeles are interested in leaving. In large measure because they just can't afford to live here. That's News Conference at 9 following Meet the Press. We'll see you then.